Hey, it's Chris Rowe. We're back with Hope in the Middle of Chaos, special edition here. I'm pretty excited about this. Jesse Crowe is with us, singer, songwriter, painter, minister. And Jesse and I had a little discussion. He's wanted to share some of his gifts in the middle of chaos. And we decided to do our own version called Songs and Stories. And so I'm just here really to serve as a sounding board and to record. Jesse's got some great original music he's going to share with us today and tell us a little bit about it. You want to start with the story about your guitar or the story about why you started playing guitar, Jesse?
Um, well, I got to tell about the guitar because it's just funny to me. Um, so this guitar was my dad's, and I'm not about to go into a sad story about how he died and that he left it to me or anything. He's
Way
still
better than
very,
that.
he is still very much alive. So anyway, he's a great dude. But I had a John Deere tractor, lawn tractor that I purchased a few years ago, and I moved to a subdivision where I had the only really grass I have is on a hill, and so it was really hard to cut grass like that all the time. And so I was going to sell the lawnmower, and my dad calls me up and says, "Hey, he had this guitar he bought several years ago, Martin, a very nice guitar. He's like, hey, I'll make a deal with you. You give me that lawnmower, and I'll give you my guitar." So after briefly, um, very persuasively talking my wife into it, um, I traded my dad. So now I've got this awesome guitar, and he's got my old lawnmower. So
Is this
that's the
is
most
this
redneck thing ever. I
is this still
traded
running?
a John Deere tractor for this lawnmower. It is. It runs like a top. He loves it too. He just drives it around even when he's not cutting grass.
That's awesome.
So
So Jesse, tell us about actually starting writing songs for yourself and kind of getting into music, and then then we'll get to the story for the first song.
So yeah, I mean, when I was 13-ish, 14, we moved from Hueytown, Alabama, to Woodstock, Alabama. Which, by the way, if you've ever heard the S Town podcast, that's the town it's based out of, and I know a lot of those people. And it's as crazy as you would think. So there you go. But we moved to Woodstock, and we moved from a nice little subdivision with paved streets that you could ride a bike, because I was all about BMX bikes, jumping stuff, riding wheelies. That was my life back then. So we moved from there to a rural, that's a hard word to say, rural town with dirt roads and very hilly. So it made riding a bike the way I used to ride a bike very frustrating. So
A place where people would trade guitars and John Deere tractors.
exactly that kind of place. So we moved there, and I got very bored very quickly. I got tired of riding. You can only jump so many ramps in your front yard. And so picked up the guitar. My dad had an old guitar that he still has, actually. It's called a Lyle. I don't know anything about them, but I picked up that and said, "Hey, how do you play this thing?" And Dad showed me a couple of chords, and I went and locked myself in my room and came out several years later. Started writing songs, and really just kind of some of my first experiences with God by myself, like not at church or it was writing music. And I was thinking about that the other day. Actually, it was like, seriously, like some of the first moments that I had, some of the special moments I've had with God, earliest moments, were writing music. And so it just became a way to both express myself and to sort of connect with God with. And so I just, I really fell in love with the process of writing music and trying to tell a story through lyric and melody has just become something I've fallen in love with more and more as the years have went by. So
That's awesome. So, what song are we going to sing first?
the song is called "Love Is a Wild Song," and I was looking at my list earlier, and I realized that like I got 4 or 5 songs on here. Like almost all of them have the word wild in there that I didn't really realize. So that's kind of a ongoing theme with me, I guess. But Love is a Wild Song, I started tinkering with this one a few years ago. I started to ponder the wildness of love, like love really expressed, whether that be from a mother and father to a child, or that be from God to, I just remember this song has a little bit of imagery from being a kid and my parents struggling to get by. I don't think anything's wilder than a dad that would do anything to provide for his family. And my dad, we came up in he was a coal miner, and in those days, in the mid '80s, unions were still forming, and so he was laid off a lot and picketed a lot. And there's anybody out there that knows that life. He was unemployed a good bit, but fought for the union. And I remember when he didn't have a job, he was out there finding a job. Like, he was just anywhere he could go. I remember there was a season in our life where he was just working all over the place. My dad was never been in great health. He's had really bad arthritis, but he just was viciously pursued provision to provide for us. And so, and as I was writing this song, I was just thinking about that and thinking about the love of God towards us and how unhinged it is, how reckless, to quote the Asbury, Corey Asbury song that has sparked a lot of theological debate, how really reckless it is and unhinged it is. And I'm a firm believer that the world was created for us. I believe God created the beauty of this world for us to enjoy. And you can't stand on a mountain in Colorado and see the rolling hills and see the beauty of it and not see the wildness in it, but also the beauty, or hear a coyote, howling in the night, and just, man, there's just a wildness to a love expressed well that really sparked the idea for this song.
And what's more hopeful than that? I was really excited about the possibility of doing a concert like this with our series. This is the third video, I think, that you're in now. What did you say earlier? But there's nothing more hopeful than someone who loves us like that. And these are fearful times. We're not stuck on the coronavirus, but we're also not unaware that a lot of folks are in the midst of this. And even in the situation you talked about with your dad, a lot of folks are struggling and out of work. So let's hear Love is a Wild Song and about the love of the Father.
Cornbread and collard greens, my mama's love and her biscuits and government cheese. There were from that.
I messed it up. Do I keep going, or what? How do we do this?
Hey, so I watched Storytellers with I think that it was Eric Clapton. And he begins and he screws up and he goes, hang on, and then starts it over. So Let's just do that. Let's just start it over.
Okay. So take 2. Love is a Wild Song. Here we go.
I was raised on corn.
I'm going to start the whole thing over. Here we go.
I was raised on cornbread and collard greens. Mama's love and her biscuits and government cheese. My daddy taught me to love my fellow man. Said the song is wilder than we can comprehend. Yeah, the song is wilder than we can comprehend. Oh, and love is a It's a father shoveling coal. It's a mother making a home. Oh, love is a wild song, and it keeps playing on and on. Love is a wild song. When I was a boy, I picked up on this wild tune. I followed the sound till it led me to the truth. There was some they tried to tone it down. Oh, but the song, it rises up when the rocks cry out. Oh, and love is a wild song. Oh, love is a wild song. It's a wolf howling at the moon. It's the flowers in full bloom. Oh, love is a wild song, and it keeps playing on and on. Love is a wild song. From an empty grave, the song played, a wild tune of love and grace, and all the minor tones, all resolved on the cross. And when the earth shook, the veil was torn, separation would be no more. And still today, the song plays on and on and on and on and on. Ooh, yeah. Oh, and love is a wild song. Oh, love is a wild song. It's a king giving up his throne to bring his children home. Oh, love is a wild song, and it keeps playing on and on and on and on. Yeah. Oh, love is a wild song. It's a wild song.
Wow, I love that, Jesse. There was a song, a line in there that I hadn't heard before. I've heard the song before, but I had not. It hadn't stuck out to me. That all the minor chords resolve. I love that. Tell me a little bit about that.
So, like on the cross, like when what we're about to celebrate, actually, it's interesting, like to think about. I always think about that scene around Easter. Like, what was that like? What was it like for the earth to go dark in the middle of the day? Can you imagine the terror for the earth to just go dark? But to and the veil tearing and all these things, and the earthquakes and stuff that happened in that moment when Jesus, when he came to rescue us, and sin had created this sort of minor melody. If you don't know what music is, minor is the sad notes. That's a minor note. That's a sad, I'm teaching Gideon guitar now, and he's learning. Is that the sad ones? Yes, that's the sad ones. But when Jesus came, there was joy. There was joy. There was hope. And that's what I love about Easter, because it's a time when we remember that the song went major again, that the minor notes resolved, and Jesus came and said, I'm taking it all. I'm taking all the failures, the sadness, all of those. I'm taking it all. And so that's kind of where that came from.
Man, I love that, Jesse. Most of the folks that know us know that you're the only person that cries easier than I do. But man, yeah, that's awesome. Let's tell the campfire story. Kind of why, how we spend a lot of time around campfires, but recently you were telling me a story about a campfire you got to sit around, and part of the kind of the inspiration for this kind of virtual concert.
Yes, I went to Florida a few weeks ago with my buddies from Live Free. There you go, right there. Monty McCart, good friend of mine and Chris's, invited me to come and hang out with them for what we call a basic boot camp. It's based on Ransom Heart, Wild at Heart stuff, about teaching men to get teaching men how to get their hearts back and how to live from their hearts and deal with their issues and stuff. And so I got invited to go to this thing, and on the way down there, Monty said, "Bring your guitar, man. We want to hear some music, And so I'm on the way down there, and I didn't get a formal invite to come and play music. I just got invited to go and hang out, which I wasn't disappointed by at all. I mean, I'm kind of at a point as a musician where if I get invited anywhere to play, if it's a Pizza Hut, I'm there to play. I mean, it's cool with me. So as we were going down there, though, I heard God say, like, you're a campfire musician. And I'm like, but I don't want to be a campfire musician. Because I think every musician likes to be on stage and likes to, to be able to get, that kind of, I guess, thing going on where you get to go invited to a music hall or whatever to perform. But I don't really get those invites very often, just for whatever reason. I don't do this a lot. So, but that's cool. But I've realized, especially after that weekend, that I like being a campfire musician. I really like sitting around with people and getting to share songs and getting to share stories. And there was a guy there, shout out Buddy Favors, his name, really cool dude. And if any songwriter needs a buddy in the crowd, because Buddy asked good questions. And I just had he and I just would. It was like he and I were having this conversation with everybody kind of listening, kind of going back and forth, like yeah. So it was just a great time. It was very enriching, very life-giving to me, and to be able to share. It's one thing just to play a song for somebody. To be able to share why you wrote it and the heart behind it is not only good for me, but I feel like it's good for other people. And so it was just a cool thing, and it was like I got in the car to go home, and I was like, "Yeah, I am a campfire musician." So it was really cool, and it's hey, I'm down, man. So
unfortunately, we can't have a campfire here. But one of the things that my wife and I were talking about recently was she has a heart like yours. A lot of the traditional worship music, like she would rather, and I know you've played this in worship before, she would be much more moved in worship by Bartender by Dave Matthews. I myself kind of prefer Amos Lee, or if we're going with Dave, Gravedigger is one of my favorites.
Just a confession, I actually played Bartender during a worship service
at
a church.
Yes.
So it was pretty cool.
Maybe we'll do like a private
I got
screening. Oh, what's the line? You can at least do one of the bartender, please serve me the wine. How does it go?
He says, the wine you gave Jesus that
set him free
for 3 days in the ground. Yeah. It's an Easter song.
That's an Easter song, yes. And so I know that you have a unique with what you write. You don't. There's a meme that goes around that says, "What do you do for a living?" And the guy responds, I write modern worship choruses. 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 You don't write that kind of song. And so you have a unique gift. And it is much more to me like worshiping with with Dave Matthews, who happens to be the son of missionaries.
Yep.
And I love that. I appreciate the heart of that, because and today I'm getting kind of my own private, whether even if we didn't publish this, I'm getting my own private concert. So what's next on our list, man?
So I'm a part of a little church called the Church at Southside, and we meet in Southside Birmingham. We used to meet on the north side because of one thing or another, and we used to have to say, we're the Church at Southside that meets on the north side. But now we're back on the south side. Long story. But anyway, we meet with some people that we've just gotten to know over the years that live on the streets, about 100 or so folks, which is a very difficult time right now, obviously, with a lot of churches. We've been doing this now for 3 years, hanging out with our friends on the street, and this next song is called "This Jesus." Kind of came from that when we were just me experiencing these friendships that I was finding with people that live under bridges and in alleyways and in abandoned cars and in government housing, and I really started God. It was around an election. It was an election year when I started writing this song, and just hearing there is some political overtones. I'm not a Trump basher or anything like that, so I want to disclaim that. Or I'm not I don't really get in those conversations or whatever. But I was just there was kind of a lot going on with the church and what I was experiencing there, and kind of what I was hearing from the Christian community in regards to this election at that time. And it was a kind of just this sort of attitude of, we're looking for a savior in this person that would lead our country or whatever. And
we could write that just about every 4 to 8 years, couldn't we?
Right. Totally. Yeah. One side or the other is looking for a savior, and so I was perplexed by that and some of the things I was hearing, but also I'm seeing this part of my city that I had never seen before. I had written these people off as lazy drug addicts that just don't want any better, because I had been told that. I had learned that from other older people through the ages, through the years of my life, and when I got to know them, I started realizing that they were very wounded, that they were very loving people, that they're not lazy. They actually, you would surprise you. They do some amazing stuff to survive. They could outwork me, I promise. But I started seeing it, and all this kind of was going on, and it was kind of going into this melting pot of my brain, of this election and people looking for a savior, and these people out there just looking for their next meal, and trying to understand where I fit into this, and trying to understand who Jesus was and where he is in this. And so I caught a glimpse of the God that I thought I knew, sort of standing in the margins of society with these people that I had passed years, for years, that I had just written off and passed over. And so this song, it really was a challenge to myself to rethink what I believe about God, what I believe about church, what I believe even about politics, and how that affects me and how that affects the world. And so I sat down one day, and it was kind of weird because it's one of those songs that doesn't really have a verse, chorus, verse, chorus. It's just this kind of collection of words that I tried my best to put to some music. So, but anyway,
it kind of reminds me of a Shel Silverstein poem. It doesn't quite fit,
right?
But it's powerful. So I'm sure Monty will love this one. So let's hear This Jesus.
We don't want to shine a light into the dark. It's easier to curse than to bless. And don't ask us to understand the plight of our fellow man. We're more comfortable on this side of the fence. only hate the ones that don't deserve love. We only despise the ones who might hurt us. And we will forgive, but only if the offenders never reoffend. But this Jesus that we wrestle with, Lord, he don't pull punches. This Jesus we say we believe in, he calls out from the margins. This Jesus died hanging on a cross, and all of his friends abandoned him. We call foul when the world laughs at us. We have the gall to call it persecution. But this Jesus became a servant to a broken, forgotten few. And this Jesus stood silent when he was falsely accused. This Jesus pulled back the curtain to reveal a deeper, much wilder love. And this Jesus, I feel certain, he looks nothing like us. Oh, he looks nothing like us. So we'll march downtown when we don't get our way, but the king we elected is gonna set things straight. And as we press on to make our country great, we'll pray like hell that Jesus will cooperate. But this Jesus, he's a wild one. Oh, and he's too unpredictable. And this Jesus, he's a stallion. Oh, and he won't let himself be broke. Oh, no. This Jesus, prone to misbehave, he won't follow these silly rules we've made. And this Jesus, prone to slip away when we think we've found him in our tiny space. And this Jesus might not be on your side, standing outside your door, ready to pick a fight. And this Jesus, he's a wild one, he's a stallion, and he can't be broke. No, Lord, he can't be broke. No. And this Jesus, he's a wild one, calling us to come and be wild too.
Man, I love that song every time. Maybe more every time I hear it. You said "wild" was a theme in a lot of these songs here, and there's a line, man, I could pick so many. But you said this Jesus is prone to misbehave. Talk to me about that a little bit.
You know, it's funny. We are so prone to, no, you said this, like you've got to do it this way, you know. This transactional kind of belief. If I do what I'm supposed to do, then you've got to do what you're supposed to do. You got to feel your end of the bargain. So Jesus is always about the business of restoring the heart, always. And so he will all, you and I have talked about this. He will always disrupt, and
That's the word.
just a holy disruption that we feel. The story of the workers in the field. The guy goes out and he goes at 9 in the morning and hires some dudes. Goes out at 12, hires some dudes. Throughout the day, he keeps going out and getting these guys. At the end of the day, he's handing them all $100 bills. $100 bills, y'all.
Yeah, Charlie.
Shout out to Charlie. Handing them all $100 bills. I don't know if that's what it was, but that was my guess. But and they all are like, wait a minute, no, that's not fair. That's not fair. And it's like, Jesus is not really fair. He's not. Like we say, oh well, in the kingdom of God, that's fairness. That's not fair in any realm. It's just not. It points to an economy that we really have a hard time understanding, the economy of love and grace that exists in the kingdom of God. But we want to hold God down. We want to, if we do all these things, if we go to church and we are good Christians and we, pay our taxes and do all the right things, then God needs to give us, like John Eldredge says, a happy little life.
Yeah.
And God's not interested in giving us a happy little life. He's much too wild for that. That's why the word wild keeps appearing in these songs, because I am learning. If I am going to follow Jesus, I'm going in the opposite direction of a happy little life. I'm going in the opposite direction of everything making sense and everything working out in my favor and the world sort of centering around myself. So,
yeah, I also love Jesse's. We do a lot of different things in ministry with Encounter. He's very involved, like he said, with the church at Southside, but I don't think there's a part of our Encounter ministries that he's not involved in. But especially with our campus ministry and our prison ministry. When we do boot camps, John Eldredge Wild at Heart boot camps for inmates. Another line in there that really hit me hard, not just for your folks who live on the street, but for our friends who are actually incarcerated. They walk in, they've got a tag on that says offender. And you had that line in there that said, only if the offenders don't reoffend. And we're getting long on this, but I don't really care. That line's powerful. Tell me just a little bit more about that, because I think we struggle with that.
So I have never shared why I put that in there, because it's so icky. There was a video, a documentary that I watched a few years ago, and it was like an hour long, and I wept through this documentary. But it was a documentary about sex offenders. And it was there's a trailer park somewhere in the southeast. I don't even remember what state it was in, but it's a government funded trailer park where they send these sex offenders. Now, I'm not defending sex offenders. I don't want you to think that, but to hear, it's very difficult to hate someone when you know their brokenness. But I wept watching and hearing some of these stories and hearing some of the abuse that these people had went through, not excusing what they did, but to hear their stories was just heartbreaking. And there was one part of the story. There was a guy that lived in the trailer park who had been there for years, and he ended up staying, because it's a place you live for a time while you serve out your probation or whatever. Then you move on, and you have to get registered and move to a neighborhood or whatever. But he ended up staying as a maintenance person, and he tells the story about this guy who drives his truck up into his front yard of his trailer, and he jumps out of the truck and he says, "You better stay away from my daughter." Now, he says it in a very colorful way. And he said, "Sir, I don't think I know your daughter." He said, "She walks home from school right in front of your trailer park, so you better stay away from her." And he said, so I went inside and I got 2 beers, and I walked out and I handed him one. He said, "You want to come and talk to me?" And this good old boy in this pickup truck says, what good old boy in a pickup truck resists a cold beer, So he takes the beer and they sit down and he tells the guy his story. And I won't tell his story because it's not important, but they actually kind of became friends after that.
Wow.
And again, I've never told that story because I don't want people to think that I'm justifying that behavior, because I'm not, because I have kids and God help the man,
Amen.
Every good father thinks that. But that line comes from watching that and what that did to me, just thinking that, like, we will love you as long as you change, as long as you don't reoffend, as long as you don't do those things again, which flies in the face of the gospel. How can you read the story of the lost son and even think that? It's like, again, we go back to the economy of God. The economy of God says, I'm going to love you no matter what. I'm going to love you no matter what you do. I'm going to love you no matter how many times you do it. Even if you do it till the day you die, I'm still going to pursue you. I'm still going to love you.
Yeah, grace is always bigger, and I appreciate the challenge of a lot of your music, and even when you share, is that that nobody's excluded from that grace, and there are some hard places to extend that. So that's thank you for sharing that part. So what's next on the list here?
So I wanted to play a song that I wrote about my, let's see, I wrote about my son.
Oh, I love this one.
I forgot where I was. I have a little list here because I'm getting old and I can't remember anything. So I wrote this about my son. He's 9 years old, and again, the word "wild" is a perfect word to describe him. But his name's Gideon, and he's named Gideon Lee Crowe because I was reading the story of Gideon when he was about to come into the world, and one of my favorite stories in the Bible, and Lee for a really close friend of mine who is wild as they come, who passed away years ago. And so Gideon is when I was first trying to get my head around this whole parenting thing, which I haven't done yet. Gideon is a boy. He's all boy. I mean, he passes gas in public and thinks it's funny.
It is.
It is. He talks in class when he's not supposed to. He'll come home and where he gets they have this behavioral sheet where he gets a mark if he gets in trouble, and he says, "I got a bad mark today." And me and Caroline, almost at the same time every time, "You were talking, weren't you? Weren't you?" And he'll go, "Yeah," because he's a chatterbox. He loves to talk. He's very social. He loves his friends. But when I was a new dad, trying to figure out, okay, where do you draw the line between, getting him to behave in public like not farting on people at a restaurant, and, where do you draw that line between there and not harming who he is as a person? You know what I mean? Like, because that was what was interesting about, just watching him play and watching him, in the woods when we, playing with sticks and stuff. It's like, my son is a wild kid, not because he's a bad kid, but because he's wild. It's in his nature to be a bit unhinged. So it's like there's this part of him that, as a dad, I have to toe the line between nurturing versus harming. And that's the balance we have to find as fathers with our sons and our daughters, is showing them when it's appropriate to be, funny or a good, pass gas joke.
Or to throw a football in the middle of church, or
Right. while somebody's speaking, which literally happened recently with a certain speaker named.
Yes, I wonder who that was. And this was on the heels of, I mean, a few years after you had first read Wild at Heart.
Right, yeah, read Wild at Heart. And so I was really trying to find myself as a parent, trying to find, like, you know, I want to nurture who he is. I want to nurture that wildness in him. But at the same time, also, he needs to be able to sit down in a restaurant and enjoy a meal, too. Because one day he's going to start dating.
Yes.
And, you know, those are important things. My wife and I have worked really well together, I think, in teaching that. But also helping him to understand that his wildness is absolutely crucial.
Yeah.
His sense of adventure is absolutely crucial to who he is as a person. And I pray he never loses it. I pray that I can do whatever I can to encourage it, but at the same time to show him, you know, how to live in society, but how to teach others to be wild, how to teach others to live from that wildness, that wild heart that he has. And you know, I will say this too before I play the song. I thought I was writing a song about my son. What I was doing was writing about how God was raising me. I was writing about how God has sought to sort of bridle the wildness in me, to harness it, and to use it, and to certainly not lose it, because that's what a lot of church theology that we sit under wants to do. It's like, just be good little boys and girls. But God, man, following Jesus is you got to be more than good. You got to be a little bit wild. You got to be a little bit unhinged, and you got to let God harness it. So,
yeah. Well, let's hear Wild Heart. Thanks, Jess.
I have given up trying to tame you, trying to make you behave. Boy, you railed against all my discipline when you don't get your own way. Boy, you have a wild heart. I guess we knew that from the start. You are who you are, so please don't change. 'Cause I'd rather have you wild anyway. Instead, I'll build a fence for you to roam in and let you kick up a fuss. And love will be the yoke you are fitted with when you're too tired to run. 'Cause boy, you have your father's heart. Guess we knew that from the start. But we are who we are, so please don't change. 'Cause I'd rather have you wild anyway. But I won't give up. I'm trying to teach you about a much wilder love, of one who will break you as he holds you and tear you down to build you up, and how he reached down into the dark just to save our wild hearts. He made us who we are, so please don't change. Please don't change. I pray you never change, 'cause I'd rather have you wild anyway.
Man, I was reminded, Jesse, of the first time you played that in prison, when we had about 70 guys listening, and what a paradox it is to sing to men who have broken the law in some way, to be wild, to men who have had substance abuse issues, to be wild, but they had never. That one gets such a response from them. I think in that very first time, they all wanted the lyrics to that song. And when we go to prison, if we do something for one, we have to do it for all of them.
Right.
To print out 70, you had to handwrite on a white piece of paper the lyrics, and then copy them for each of the inmates. But they've never had a father who loved them and nurtured and trusted their wildness. And so they'd been harmed and hurt, not hemmed in out of love. But I love that song. And I just always
kind of messed up a little bit on the chords there, but try not to. I get
Just
into
keep-
songs and I start to, that's the when you're playing and it's like you're really feeling it. It's like, oh wait, there's a different chord there.
you just play through it. That's what they all do. So what's next on the list here?
So if I got to play a song about my son, I have to play about my daughter. So this song is called Dandelion. Wrote it when my daughter was right after my daughter was born. We weren't expecting to have another girl. My wife was. My wife is she has I don't know how she does it, but she can always tell when someone is pregnant, and if they haven't said the gender, she knows, and she's been right every time.
That makes it for me because I'm always wrong.
She's like, and I was kind of thinking we were going to have another boy. So when we found out we were having a girl, it was just like, I don't know, it was a weird feeling. It was like I kind of had gotten my head around a little bit of having a little dude around, but having a girl was there was I don't know how to say it. There was something in me that I don't know, it was just a different experience preparing for a daughter. There was just this sense of protection. And when I say that, I'm like, it's not that I wouldn't protect my son. It was just different you have a boy and a girl, so you can kind of know what I'm talking about. It's like there's this, it's this delicate little flower that needs to be in a case, something. I don't know.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. My son is like, well, he's kind of he can get bumped around a little bit, but my daughter's like this precious thing, So I was really, man, it was just for the first week we brought her home, it was just an interesting sort of emotion I can't describe. There was something welling up in me. And I began to pray. I was like, God, I really want to write something to pass on to her. That was really the desire of my heart, was just something to give her, to capture the way I felt about her in the experience it was being her dad in those early years. So I was sitting at a red light, and I'd been thinking for days of what to write, and I'd played with several different music, but I just couldn't. It's like that. There's an itch there that you need to scratch, and when you find the right lyric in the right music, it's like you finally can scratch that itch, and the itch was still there. So I'm sitting at a red light, and I'm at this T where you got to go right or left, and I look across, and this was in a part of town that's the sidewalks were poorly maintained, and a lot of boarded up houses and stuff. Very sad part of Birmingham, and so I'm sitting there, and you know sometimes when the roots will kind of take over if they're not maintained, and the sidewalk had busted up, so it was kind of this kind of bumpy little area. I looked across, and in this bumped up place, this clump of grass had grown out, and in the middle of that grass was a dandelion. And it was just, I remember going, like this look, like, why am I looking like that? It just, as I looked at it, I think the light cycled through one time, but I was in a part of town not many people go, so I don't think anybody was behind me, but I was sitting there staring at this thing going, that's it. That's what it's like to have a daughter. Like in this, you know, what can be, we live in a beautiful, amazing world, but it can also be a very ugly world. It can be, there's a lot of ugliness here. And to have something so precious that springs up in what can be a very ugly world, that was it. It was like this idea that the world needs her.
Yeah.
The world needs her beauty. The world needs my son's wildness. The world needs my daughter's beauty.
Yeah.
And so there was just this desire in my heart to teach her, don't hide in the shade. Show your beauty, man. Let people see who you are. Don't shrink back from loving and caring for people. And you know, and I've told her before, you know, there's this joy that she brings, and she doesn't even know it. There's this joy that she brings to people that the world needs that. And so this song, Dandelion, is something that I wrote just for her, and I wanted her to have it and be able to listen to it when I'm dead and gone and go, oh, my dad was pretty cool. So,
well, we don't go anywhere. There's not any environment that we're at with your daughter. She's not the focus. She is just, everybody notices Tegan. Everybody is drawn to her, and she is absolutely beautiful and adorable. But there's something inside of her that's more than her outward beauty. And I mean, whether it's Daryl or it's the folks who live on the street, Gideon's a pinball and bouncing around. And when we're with Tegan, everyone's drawn to her. So, right. Looking forward to this song, Dandelion.
You spring up into the light like a flower through the concrete. I looked into your eyes and fell in love as I held you close to me. I saw your mama cry, beauty and love in her eyes. Our little dandelion, struggling to find the light. Born into a fallen world, beating heart and flesh and bone. Our little flower girl, growing up among the weeds and thorns. Don't let your colors fade. Oh, and don't live your life in the shade. And let the sun shine on your heart, daughter, and let love bloom in its light. And don't forget who you are, daughter. Oh, sweet little dandelion. how beautiful you are. You may get trampled like a weed, oh, but don't let it break your heart, 'cause the gardener has seen your worth long before you sprang up from the dirt. So let the sun shine on your heart, daughter. Let love bloom in its light. And don't forget who you are, daughter. Oh, sweet little dandelion. And when you take to the world, may your roots find the soil of the kingdom of grace, and may your soul be satisfied in the love of the one who died in your place. Oh, he died in your place. So let the sun shine on your heart, daughter, and let love bloom in its light. And don't forget who you are, daughter. Oh, sweet little dandelion. So let the sun shine on your heart, daughter, and let love bloom in its light. And don't forget who you are, daughter. Oh, sweet little dandelion.
Man, I love it. I hope Tegan, she doesn't get that yet, does she?
She likes to dance to it. That's
Cool.
about it.
Well,
She
that's
does,
cool.
Like every now and then will you play my song? And it's awesome because she'll just dance, spin in circles, and kind of get lost in the moment. And I hope one day she asks questions.
Right.
Somebody asked me that recently, like, how are you going to explain that to her? And I'm like, I want her to ask. I want her to come to me. I don't want to say, hey, do you know why I wrote this or whatever. I would like for the song to spark something in her little heart that causes her to, first of all, see her own beauty and begin to ask questions about that. So,
That's good. And so, do we have one more? Or we?
sure, I can do one more. How about I got one that I wrote about the Cahaba River. How about that one?
Okay.
Kinda
What's the Cahaba River for our folks that aren't from Alabama here?
If you're not from Alabama and you don't know about the Cahaba River, I feel sorry for you because it's one of the most beautiful rivers in the world. I haven't seen a lot of rivers in the world, but the ones that I have, the Cahaba is just a cool little. It's
one of the most biodiverse on the planet.
Biodiverse. There are actually organisms and little fish that exist in the Cahaba, believe it or not, that don't exist anywhere else in the world. There's a flower called the Cahaba lily, and that particular, how do you say, strain of that flower or particular flower or whatever, I don't know how you say that. There are flowers like it, but that particular one doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. The reason most experts that are experts on rivers and nature and stuff say that the reason it's so biologically diverse is because it's been allowed to flow freely. Most rivers in Alabama, or several rivers in Alabama, they have dammed up to use them for energy purposes. So I know all this about the Cava not because I'm expert, but because I tried my hand at fly fishing a few years ago, which I still fly fish. And my buddy Mike Skelton.
Everybody's getting shout outs today.
Yeah, Mike Skelton, dear friend, still hang out with. We still fly fish together. He was like, "Man, we gotta fish the Cahaba. Like, I know it's a lot of people don't fly fish on the Cahaba, but like you can catch bass all day long. They're not very big, but you can catch bass all day long." So he got me into it, and I went and bought some gear, and he gave me some gear, and so the Cahaba is interesting because there are days when you can just clean up, you can catch fish all day, and then there are days when you don't catch anything, which that's fishing in general. But the Cahaba is a little bit more quirkier than most places, and there are times where you can put a canoe in and you never have to get out of the canoe. Like you can just flow on and everything's cool and everything. And then there are days where it's bump and drag, so it's very unpredictable. When it rains, in rivers that have dams on them, when it rains high, they just open the dam and kind of let some water go. With the Cahaba, if it rains, it's muddy. If it doesn't, then it might be all right. So it's just a finicky, kind of quirky river, but it flows the way God intended. And the reason why I write a song about the Cahaba River, well, the reason was because I was learning a lot about. I was following God in the process of helping to lead a church at the time, and I was just Mike and I had several discussions out on the Cahaba, throwing a fly rod, just talking about church and how it's supposed to look and all these different things, and he and I just began to sort of have these deep, really conversations. I still remember today about is it really supposed to look like we have tried to forge it into looking, that we've tried to mush it into this mold of what we think it's supposed to be. And what I've learned is God is very much like the Cahaba. There are times where the water's flowing great, and there are times where it's not, and there are times where we want to harness God. We want to harness the movement of God and be able to sort of program that and pass that out to people and allow people to sort of get it as they want it and make it convenient. We want to make the movement of God and the gospel convenient for people. And what I have learned is God's not that easy.
Yeah.
Every time I'm on the Cahaba, I have the greatest conversations with God because it's like it's really his personality, and he nurtures life. He nurtures wildness. He nurtures goodness, and he nurtures beauty. And everywhere that river touches, it's beautiful. The land reaps the benefit of that river. So again, sitting in a canoe, starting to jot down this idea of this wild river and how it's very much like our God. So,
all right. Well, the name of it is
Wild River. Again, the word wild makes an appearance.
All right, Wild River with Jesse Crowe.
Is so haunting as she weaves and winds through the valley, past the city lights, oh, and on she goes. She is free flowing, yeah, unhindered and wild. She nurtures nurtures the wild things as her waters writhe and on she goes. Oh, and on she goes. Wild river, yield your mysteries, wild river. Will you speak to me? Where are you taking me now? Her waters rise after the rain, and she cleanses the earth on her way to the sea, and on she goes. Wild river, yield your mysteries, wild river. Will you speak to me? Ooh, wild river, where are you taking me now? And the Spirit flows from the throne of God like a wild river, and the dead men rise. Oh, Spirit, yield your mysteries to the weakest, Lord, to the least of these. Oh, Spirit, I am listening. Will you speak to me, Lord? Where are you taking me? Where are you taking me now? Where are you taking me now?
Love it, Jesse. Love it. Glad we started this. What's the one word besides wild that that kind of seems all this draws all this together for you today?
Um, I would say beauty.
Hmm.
Beauty comes to mind. Like I think we said this the other day, or we were talking about it the other day. I don't know if we said it in one of the video things that we did, but there is just something about. Actually, it was Stacy Eldridge that said this recently. She was talking about in Philippians 4, I think it is. Whatever's good, whatever's lovely, whatever's beautiful, whatever's. Paul's going through all these adjectives, and he says, whatever's good and beautiful and all these things, think on these things. So I would say, it's we get so pigeonholed into thinking about music, especially Christians. Is it a Christian song, or is it not, or is it uplifting or whatever? And I think, man, what I have learned about music is that God, the beauty of God, is in all of it.
Yeah.
Whether the writer even knows it or not.
Yeah. Every love song ever written was really about Jesus.
Absolutely, man. It's just. That's one reason why I love to write. That's one reason why I love to be a part of that. That this beauty, this thing of beauty that God is creating, this tapestry of music that He's creating with so many different artists. Like I said, whether they know it or not, I get into a small way in my neck of the woods around a campfire get to be a part of that. And so I would just say, like, man, in this time we're in, I know we're all sick of hearing about the virus and all this stuff, but man, God is in the beautiful things, and we have time now to stop and slow down and enjoy those things. And I think we should take it.
Well, I want to thank you for offering that to us.
Well, thanks for letting me, man. This has been really good for my heart.
Well, good for my heart too. I'm not so sure that we won't be doing it again here in the real near future.
I'm feeling a part two. Come on.
Yeah, I'm feeling a part two as well. Just to remind folks, give everybody your email and how they can get in touch with you, and then I'll close this out.
I would love to hear from anybody out there about music or whatever. Crowe Music, CROWE music @gmail.com. Very easy. crowmusic@gmail.com.
And you can find them on Facebook as well. You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/encounter04. That's our ministry page. You can email me at Chris Rowe, CHRISROE32 @gmail.com. That's the easiest way to get a hold of me. And Encounter is supported entirely by donations, entirely by individuals like Jesse, who not only volunteer, but support us financially. So if you'd like to know more, check us out. You can also find us at encounterministriesonline.org. And yeah, that's good. That's it. We're going to pull the plug on that. Jesse, don't go anywhere. We'll still have a little afterwards conversation. And if anybody is still listening, I haven't told Jesse this yet, but if anybody's still listening and you want a secret, special, extra song or two, message me through our Facebook page, and I'll send you something. So this will be the end, and thank y'all.